I think the question we have in this country is a very simple one. The challenge we have is 3 words. Not the mambo na matatu of the president. My 3 words are rule of law. Rule of law. Hiyo ndio mambo matatu ya Kenya. Shida ya Kenya ni hiyo. If we can implement this constitution, we'll be out of the woods. The problem is we don't want to implement it. We watered it down from the Bomas process. It was very heavily watered down. Then even this watered down version, people don't want to implement it. That's where the problem is. And I've seen a lot of anger here. But the anger is being directed at the puppets, not the puppeteers. Even Ruto is a puppet. The day we understand that decisions in this country are being made elsewhere, that's the day of our emancipation. So the question I've been asked about the dwindling funds of government, and these funds, what are they for? The funds that were the taxes we are paying, what are they for? For me, the taxes designed to ensure that we remain a client state. We become a client state and we remain one. These are not taxes that are basically for service delivery. If you look at the architecture that has come in, especially in the legislations we have had, it has been that government should not be a service provider. Government should be a tax collector and not a service provider. When the president forms a task force to audit the national debt, and he doesn't put a pause on paying that debt, what is he up to? If you don't know what you are paying, why are you continuing to pay? That is the kind of games you don't want. And he is a puppet for those who are driving a neoliberal agenda in this country to reduce us into modern slaves who are tenants paying rent in their own country. You were paying rent to be in Kenya. So who are we paying that rent to? So I think that if we implemented our constitution, beginning with chapter 1, that the people are sovereign, and we decided to say we are sovereign, and we put our foot down, and dared whoever wants to dare us, that we are a sovereign people, we shall begin putting a solution to the issues we have. Otherwise, we shall continue engaging outside the arena. Sometimes I like watching American wrestling. Not the traditional wrestling, but American wrestling, where people throw each other out and club each other out of the ring, and the referee does not see it, does not count. So that's the kind of thing I'm seeing in this room. A lot of anger, but fighting in arenas that will deliver nothing. For the short time I've been here, I've had people agonizing. I've not had anybody organizing. There's a lot of agonizing, there's a lot of complaining, there's a lot of whining. I even saw one complaining about my committee yesterday, which was interrogating this thing of the oil, the importation of oil, that this is where we are getting shocked that KBC was the Kenya Commercial Bank is about to collapse because of the pressure it was put upon to finance these tags, to bring in so-called cooking oil and stuff. So let us come back and say, what do we need to do to implement our constitution? Let us not get distorted into this debate that will not deliver. We can argue the question of debt until the chickens come home. You are not going to get anywhere. What I want to see happening, how do we organize to be the sovereign people that chapter 1 of the Constitution opens with? The only thing I agreed with is somebody who said that Parliament virtually and the State House were dissolved the day demonstrators got into parliament and MPs ran away. The delegated power for me, for all practical purposes, was withdrawn. And right now the government we have, whatever you call it, broad-based or whatever, it is a government that is in place by force of arms. And it says, you come, we shall kill you. And you had the president on 25th of June state on national TV that at whatever cost, the status quo will be protected. I don't know if you heard him. And that's the reality. So the question should be that on your mind should be that how do we defeat this military organization as a people? Do we keep on throwing our bodies at it and being mowed down? Or within the system, are there spaces within which you can organize and legitimately take over the power and implement the agenda in Article 1, that the people are sovereign? Nothing else matters. Everything else is anchored on that particular phrase. Right now, the people are not sovereign. That's why, for some of us who are older, have seen, at independence, we got a semblance of a state. But if you look through time, I want to give you the question of construction of roads in this country. We used to have the Ministry of Roads, or Ministry of Work, Public Works and stuff. It has kept on changing this name, but it basically did the public works. It had caterpillars. Even in the villages where we were very far from Nairobi, in the border of Uganda, you could see government caterpillars building roads, caterpillar tractors. Today, they came up and said, instead of saying that this ministry should be strengthened and if there's any mismanagement, we deal with it, they said dissolve this ministry, create organizations, create there are 4 organizations. There's a mother organization called the Kenya Roads Board at the top. Underneath, we have got the Kenya National Roads Highway for building trunk roads. Then you have got the Kenya Urban Roads, doing the urban roads. Then you have got the Kenya Rural Roads Authority doing whatever, the rural roads. I've looked around. These people don't even own a spade. There are bureaucracies for processing tenders. There are bureaucracies for processing tenders. For the last 30 years, I've had an office at NSSF. And I've been observing something that may escape many people. NSSF is a government body. It requires to have the security mechanism, people, these watchmen, the security guards. NSSF keeps on contracting, issuing tenders for different companies to come after a period of about 3 years. They say they've changed whoever is supplying the tender, whatever. One thing I've noticed, most of the guards there just change uniform. They tell you it's a new company, it has been given a tender, but people who have been there for 30 years, I keep on seeing the same people changing uniforms. But then, you go and we look at what NSSF is paying per watchman, and what then those tender holders pay that person is terrible. I ask myself, why can't NSSF employ these people directly and pay them the salary they are paying the tenderpreneurs and have them live proper lives, raise proper families and live? Because are the same people who keep on changing uniform. Why are we having this?
Senator, just to clarify what you were saying, you're talking about organizing to be the sovereign people.
Yes.
Is it organizing towards the general election? Or what exactly?
I leave it to you to answer. I want to raise the problem. The general election, the way things are today, is also an arena that will not deliver. We must organize to make sure that the general elections we have are able to determine losers from winners and winners from losers.
Okay, all right.
So what I'm saying
Yep.
is that we need to look at the institutional framework.
Yep.
and go back to the drawing board and begin organizing. How do we engage? Elections are there? Yes. But the problem is so deep that I want people to understand. And the reason I was giving this narrative of roads is that towards the end of Uhuru's government, I managed to push the government to allocate money to a road in Busia. This road is 22.5 kilometers. It was to be tarmacked. Money was given to Kenya Roads Board. Kenya Roads Board goes and gets the implementing agency, which is KERA. The first thing I'm asked when the money is given to KERA, part of the money is given to KERA, I'm called and said, Mheshimiwa, we have got money to start building your road. Do you have a contractor? I said, I've never built a road in my life. I don't even know into contractors. So in the discussion, I told the MD, what I want is a road. Yeah. I don't have a contractor. Then along somebody tells me, you know you're a politician, and I know you have got many needs. And if you have a contractor, then you'll be able to get some money given to you for your things. So I said, I don't want that. So I insisted, and I kept off. Eventually, they did the tender. They identified their contractor. Somebody comes on the ground. Then I noticed something very strange. You know these cubicle, these things where the squares where they build the sites. The kind of iron sheets the fellow was using to fence was really one that was really had been used over and over and over. Then I began wondering, does this man have the capacity to do a road worth 2.5 billion? So to cut a long story short, he brings in equipment, looks funny, he begins building the road. I decided to hire a firm of private engineers to do an audit of what is happening. Then I realized the road had been narrowed, the specifications, the tarmac was thinner, the foundation, most of the part was, they were compacting the earth, not putting in stones. So the report is done. I go with the report back to the Kenya Roads Board. I say, look at what's happening. And these people say they are suspecting about 41 million shillings has not been factored into the project. They would have been given only 150 million to do a section and a bridge. So I go to Kenya Roads Board. They look at the report from this private firm I had hired to audit the project. So they hire their own auditors to go on the project site. And they discover that it's not 41 million missing, it is 60 million that has been taken out of 150 million. That's almost half. Has been taken out, showed the work is being done, the money is there, and the project is behind time. It was supposed to take 6 months. This was about 2 years later. Now, a road the 22-kilometer road that is fully funded, that should have been built about 6 months ago and completed, has only been built 1.3 kilometers. And now they want to begin revising the costs because they felt the money that was given was much more than the cost of the road, so they have to hang around to still. So that is the depth of the problem. Okay. It's not a question of it's not a question of politicians. Yeah. Because I've heard a lot of people talk about politicians. The road goes the whole way. All right. And we must begin cleaning it from there.
All right, Senator. We'll come back to you. Wanjiru, really, as he says, it's not just about the political class or about the politicians. It is a solution that has to, should I say broad-based, that has to come from every corner of this country. What are your thoughts surrounding that?
Thank you so much, Sam. And yes, accountability is a two-edged sword. It affects all of us. Corruption affects all of us, and for us to clean up, it takes all of us. And I'll say there's been an example, I think many examples used here about procurement, about CDF. And you know that, of course, during the protests, CDF became a big issue. There is now a proposal that CDF should be restructured and put towards free education. And that brings quite a lot. There's 2 or 3 issues there. Number one, there is CDF and the Member of Parliament. Why has Parliament been able to hold on to CDF? We have a Supreme Court ruling, actually, that require MPs out. And it's because of the incentive structure. The way CDF is designed, those tenders are awarded up to the project level. So members of Parliament know Who wants CDF? It is the people. Because they are benefiting, they have spread the gains. So to really, and you know, CDF is what you call a slush fund. MPs use it for political mobilization, they use it for themselves, but they are not eating alone. So the problem of corruption is who benefits. We are all competing to benefit. So the question is, how do we root out corruption? And I will say this because that's the question you asked me, is as a country, you saw the poll, the TIFA poll that said 80% of Kenyans supported the Gen Z protest, 80%. Because I'm a parent of a Gen Z and a millennial, and parents were talking, even religious leaders were talking, and they were saying, thank God our children have gone out on the street. This was before the killing started. You know, those early days. Even members of parliament, I was called by some of your colleagues who said, hey, you know, it's been bad. Now we are feeling we can work. So the hope, our country is in a hole because we can see really we don't have a country. This is very predatory capitalism. What you're hearing, that's not a country. That's really a very captured state. So the protest brought hope. And the question we need to ask is, how do we capture that hope and move from the protest to transformation? And that is what our senator here is saying, our people's champion is saying. It takes organization. Because examples in other states, for instance, Egypt had a successful spring. They managed to remove a dictator. No sooner had they removed a dictator, the elites regrouped and were then able to use the very same process to remove a moderate and bring in an even worse hardliner. So now we are in the counter-revolution because we shocked politicians. I don't know if you were watching news and seeing the body language. They were scared. Even as the president is talking, you could almost imagine their mind is like, they are wondering, these children, how are they the ones who have laid us low? Because Kenya is under new management. Kenya is under Gen Z management demanding accountability. But I think the reality is we have a very murderous regime that doesn't mind killing a few to tame the majority. They don't mind because that's what they have done. Abductions, intimidation. I can't imagine the psychology of a young person who's been abducted, who's getting phone calls to intimidate them, because that is what the state is doing to its people. That is why there is no report. I mean, there has been no police report on the killings, on the brutality to question and to investigate, because the state can't investigate itself. But the point is, Kenyans have seen it is possible. And Kenyans are fed up. Those great poets here, Kenyans are fed up. So the question is, how do we move? And the question I ask myself is, where were the religious leaders? Where were the civil society leaders? Where were the business leaders? Of course, Gen Z kept saying, our parents, stay home. But really, there's one, even if you have the numbers, you can't move alone because you need the others. And in protests, what is known to work is that cross-sector planning, structuring. So, and then our social culture, like I said and we've discussed here, has tolerated and expects corruption. We have to be very honest, like the gentleman who talked, the poet about I am corruption and you love me. We have to say that is where we are starting, that a majority, there is a study that was done that said in any institution, maybe 25 or 30% will never be corrupt because of whichever reasons. They're Maraga type, do what you will. Then there is another 20% on that end who will always be corrupt. Their job is to find loopholes. The majority are in the middle. They go with the flow. So when the leadership is corrupt, that majority goes with the corrupt. That is where we are. So all of us have to own this problem. So it's really not finger pointing, but it's being very determined. And I love the values personally. I've been in this struggle for 20 years, working on accountability. And I love the values I saw of solidarity, of courage, of coming out on the street. We have to talk about non-violent action and what it means to all the sectors, not just Gen Z. Because how do you unseat people who are benefiting at our expense and are ready to use the gun? So those are questions. I think that is maybe 2 points, 2 other points. When we changed the constitution, there was an interruption in the process. And there were a few leaders who are saying, when you change a constitution after a period of a lot of corruption and really entrenched mismanagement, you need an interim period where you have a kind of interim government that helps spearhead from the old order to the new order. But we were excited. The constitution, a new constitution, Moi has gone, people moved into a new constitution, but we carried the culture. So we have a good constitution, but we don't have the culture of constitutionalism. And if this process were to really follow its natural trajectory, that's where we need to go. We need the government. This is not even the government. This captured apparatus needs to step aside, give us a period where we clean up shop, where we design and redesign into an institution that can take us into the future. Okay. Because as we are now, that can't happen. Maybe very, very last point on the social audits. The lady said she's been doing social audits. She's able to ask for the BQs. Everyone can do those audits. We've seen, a lot of young people stepping up to do that. If we start auditing the MCA, the ward projects, the CDF projects, those projects on the ground, we begin to hold government accountable. So I wish to encourage those who are doing that to continue, and those who are not to join forces as we organize politically. So the solution is political, it is social, it is also economic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anjiru. And just to let you know that the Senator of Kisii, Richard Onyonka, has joined. We'll be speaking to him shortly. But before we do that, Fanya Mambo, so here we are talking about what change needs to be seen. And if you've listened to Kenyans, there are a good section of them that are getting tired, that is taking so long. What, in your opinion, is required as structural reforms legally, but also the people and politically, knowing too well that politics is largely organized in political parties here in Kenya?
Very good morning. How is everybody? How are we today? Najua hatujasalimiana na mimi ni Mkenya napenda salamu. Thank you very much. I must say thank you to the organizers of this forum for having given me an opportunity to sit here. I don't take it for granted. I'm actually very humbled. But very quickly, because I want to get to your question, how did we get here? On November, I think around 28th, 2023, I said something that got to the phones of very many people. We said that we've gotten to a point where the government now needs to take the salary and we take the taxes. Because it appeared the taxes were, the salaries were smaller than the taxes. You work and the government takes more than what you get. And from there, I remember we went to Bomas 1, 2, and we went to Bomas. And people were talking of devolution at NADCO. People were talking of counties and increasing counties. They had even suggested that Teso becomes a county and Kuria becomes a county. And I went there and I said, the next big fight in this country is going to be about taxation. And you cannot talk about the cost of living without talking about taxation. I was actually an abnormal voice at Bomas of Kenya. But those videos went viral because I knew the next problem was going to be taxation. When I first spoke about finance bill, people called me a busybody on TV. He's got nothing else to do. Huyu akili anavanga to sweater. In fact, when I walked in here, I was in a suit. And I said, this is not me. I'm always in a sweater. And people know me for that. And they've called me very interesting names. So I just decided, let me be in what I like. And so when we spoke about it, finance bill for the first few times, people thought I was insane. But I thank God that by the time Gen Zs were going on the streets, I saw so many placards that had so many words that we had said on TV and radio about finance bill. Ilianguka, haikuanguka. Ilianguka, haikuanguka. When we went further and decided, let us do what needs to be done. And we said that in addition to fighting against the finance bill, I told people about some people we had not elected, getting money, yet we had not elected them. People said, oh, it has always been happening. I compared it to a City Hopper driver who gets employed by City Hopper, but his wife is also paid a salary. And people say that's abnormal. Then I asked them, why are you okay with the first lady getting a salary yet we didn't vote for her? Hiyo kitu ilisha haikuisha. Ilisha haikuisha. It is heading there. So what we are trying to say is that the first step is to create awareness, is to speak so boldly about it. When I first said that the president is going to countries that Kenya does not trade with, you know, some Guinea-Bissaus, we are getting to know the name of the president right now. And people said, hey, huyu aogopi, then tukaanza kuambua mambo ni matatu. Have those trips reduced or not? Have they reduced or not? So the thing is, before you get into any fight, create an army. Try as much as possible to create people who think like you. And to have so many of them who believe in what you are saying and who believe and understand the impact of what is happening. That way, by the time you exit from the fight, I was not even able to attend the Gen Z's maandamano. I went for a few, and every time I kept being told, wewe, si unajua mambo yako. You know, there were so many DCI inside there. So anyway, we had to withdraw from it. But what happened is that because we had so many people who believed in this cause, it happened. As I come towards answering your question, because I like just hitting it on the head. Number one, what recommendations are we going to make? The first one is, do not be a government if you cannot offer service. We need to come and say, you know, today, if you were to collapse on a street when you are walking, it will be very hard for a county ambulance to come and pick you up. Lakini terminal ya gari yako ikichomoka when you are driving, I can assure you there will be 5 breakdowns before you can open your bonnet and return the terminal. Because in towing you there is money, but in taking you to a hospital there is no money. So we are giving notice to Sakaja. We are tired of seeing private contractors fixing roads in Nairobi. Kama wewe hauwezi tengeneza barabara kama Sakaja, exit the stage. Why are we giving tenders to people? Nairobi City County used to have graders. They used to have items that were used to fix our roads. They used to have tractors. They used to have engineers. Why? Do you know I have seen some of these people who are being given tenders, people who cannot even build a toilet. Someone tells you, oh my God, let me tell you, imagine I got the tender for this road, and then you look at the nails and then you ask them, have you ever built a toilet? You? No. But you have a tender for a road? Yes. What are city engineers doing? Sakaja and to the entire national government. If you people cannot build a road, you have no business being in governance. There has to come to a point where we stop this tenderpreneuring and government becomes a service provider for Kenyans. That is non-negotiable. Number two, we have for a long time had pre-qualification of suppliers. Get it for the first time, we are changing that. We have to move to pre-qualification of manufacturers. I want to repeat that. We are going to stop this nonsense of pre-qualification of suppliers and move to pre-qualification of manufacturers. The reason I'm saying that is this. When you wake up today, Kenya is manufacturing biro pens. But the bulk of pens in government offices are from China. Why does that happen? Because when you give the tender to a supplier, what they do is they look for the cheapest source, and that has to be outside the country. And that is what, by the way, the same pen that we buy for 20 shillings, government buys it at 250 shillings. When you stop pre-qualifying suppliers, people will stop this nonsense of going to buy things from China. They will set up factories because government is only pre-qualifying manufacturers. 60 years of independence, and we cannot manufacture a bicycle. We have to stop that nonsense. So we have to start pre-qualifying manufacturers. And so that in every category where there is a manufacturer tendering and a tenderpreneur offering themselves, we give the manufacturer. Number 3, and I'm almost finishing. If today you give a tender of 1 billion to one person to renovate State House, because I tend to imagine maybe Uhuru was sitting on plastic chairs. I think the roof was leaking. Whenever Museveni visited, they would borrow a toilet. Actually, he comes with a toilet. What was the need to renovate State House for? So anyway, when you give the tender to renovate State House to one tenderpreneur, once they are done, they buy a 40 million Range Rover, and a few other things. Now we need to change that and start saying where there are 2 people tendering, an individual and a chama. Like, can you imagine if 300 women had tendered to be given the tender to renovate State House? That money would have gone to 300 families. And it would have impacted on the lives of women who have 300 families and their children and their husband and other dependents. If it was a chama today that has got 20 young people, and that chama comes and tenders and gets a tender for 200 million, it has gone into the pockets of 20 people. Right. This one where you give 1 billion to one person, it takes one child to a school where they pay school fees for 400,000 per child, as opposed to giving to many people, and it goes to many schools and supports many children. Most finally, this idea of thinking that this country has to pre-qualify itself for everything has to come to an end. I think let us be people who will say from now our fiscal policy is changing. Wherever we have many people tendering for something coming under one banner, and you have one tenderpreneur with a big stomach coming with a V8, that tender will go to a group of 500 young men or 500 women. They will supply, and that money will be distributed to many families. Thank you so much.
All right.